Summer is passing, and school begins in all of its confusing forms, and autumn approaches. The water celebration is a way to mark this momentous time of endings and beginnings and return. It was a gift to us all from out of the spirituality of Unitarian Universalist women who honored the water's presence as vital to all life. Eons ago, life was born out of it. Life is virtually impossible without it, and water is powerful. Give it enough time and it will carve stone, it will leave Grand Canyons in its wake. But water is also a symbol of surpassing beauty. It symbolizes the depths of spiritual life. As when we sing, there's a river flowing in my soul, or when the poet says, my soul has grown deep like the rivers. And then there's the way water symbolizes beloved community. As drops of rain that find each other and build to become a track, a rivulet, a stream, a river, a sea, so we are drawn together. So are we fortunate to find each other. So are we bound together on this shared passage toward an unknown ocean and eternity. What is it to be a drop with a dream? It is to be inside of a collective problem that we can only solve by changing individual behavior. For the hero of our story, a story which, by the way, I heard as a child, a young Unitarian Universalist child, from my director of religious education, Chris Bice. He would tell us the story of this drop named Higgins. For Higgins, it was a long, cold, lonely winter looking out on that desolate land. And suddenly, others, one at a time, and then all together, saw the world from his vantage point. They saw how they could change it, could make it bloom, and they miraculously joined him in creating the solution. Like that protest song goes, drops of water turn the mill, singly none, singly none. If we are but a few drops in a bucket, though, how do we turn the tide? Let us consider face masks. I have a beautiful one right here, created by Diane Loop. Thank you for this. By now we know face masks are highly effective in preventing the spread of COVID-19. In fact, if we all wore face masks all of the time, Goldman Sachs says that alone could avert $1 trillion in economic loss by preventing future lockdowns. More importantly, health experts say masks could save 33,000 lives just by October. A whole stadium of lives saved. As Karen Duffin, the host of NPR's Planet Money, points out, that is if, and only if, enough of us wear them. We are in the group project of our lives that we will pass or fail based on participation. But not everyone wants to participate. Some people just won't wear them. Others don't even believe they work. And so as we approach month 9 of this pandemic, it might be a good moment to just step back, not to finger point, not to judge, simply to ask with true curiosity and maybe a dose of humility, why don't some people wear masks? And is there anything we can do to convince them to have more and more drops in the bucket? And in this particular episode of Planet Money, they interviewed behavioral economists about the nudge, which is a series of small nudges that have been used in our society for many years to reduce littering, to reduce cigarette smoking, to reduce drinking and driving, to change behavior. And these nudges, they work. But the thing is, it's not facts and data that moves people to action. When people are faced with uncertainty, which I think we all are, we look around us. We grasp for things in our environment that can help us to make sense of the uncertainty and resolve it. So many things get in the way of this happening. We see what is in front of us, and we automatically apply it to a universal experience. So if someone in their community only has a few cases, then they might not understand how COVID-19 is running rampant in other communities. So if everyone in your friend group and everyone in your community wears masks, then it will feel more natural for you to wear one. We also suffer from optimism bias, always thinking that the worst outcome probably won't happen to me. We have trouble making meaning out of large numbers, and on top of it all, we are also dealing with mixed messages and confusion from our political leaders at the highest level. Economist Sion Benoit tells us, as corners of America that were still untouched by the virus started getting lectures from urban America, where the virus was already raging, this kind of finger-wagging sparked what's called psychological reactance, which is that when people perceive external constraints on their freedom coming from the outside, they are prone to push back against those constraints. Journalist Karen Duffin likened it to what happens when, for example, your sister asks you to wash the dishes. And even if you were just about to do them, suddenly not washing the dishes is the hill you will die on. It's like that, but for a whole country. Except in this case, the sister is anyone on the other side of your own politics. Masks have become this politicized symbol, a way to signal in-group identity. And instead of debating the health or the science, for some, it's become a debate over individual rights. A few studies show that while more than 3/4 of Americans support mask wearing, the people who resist masks the most cite personal freedom as their reason. So, if you walk up to someone not wearing a mask and yell at them, which I think a lot of people are feeling like they want to do these days when they see these folks, well, that can entrench them even more. So that can make them even more resistant to the behavior change that they need. So it certainly is one thing that these economists do not suggest we do. What is required for widespread behavior change is a tightrope walk of positive nudging mixed with light shaming from the right messenger, like myself probably, and others who are the right messengers, with a localized message. But too much shaming and you've crossed over to offending their individual freedom. The messenger must make an emotional plea, please, but not too much so as to instill fear or defiance. It's a tightrope walk. But what of those who are finishing the group project on time? What of those who are wearing masks? And I assume I'm speaking about this entire congregation who are wearing masks whenever they go out. What's clear is this. This was the summer I became more judgy than I would like to admit. Perhaps you, like me, are noticing your neighbor's behaviors. You are shaking your head in disdain at your fellow community members for their choices to send their kid to a private school this year, or to a learning pod in their own home, or to unschool. Perhaps you are outraged your friends went to a restaurant, or you are disgusted a family member's church is reopening. It is true. Some choices, personal choices, are misguided and can end in real tragedy. But as this pandemic goes on, take care of your own frayed nerves. The only person we can ever really control is ourselves. And so seek, amidst your outrage, amidst your anxiety and judgment of others, an oasis of inner grace. Each year, around this time, I choose a word of the year, like a watchword, one that I plan to return to as I plan worship or lead meetings or respond to events. All summer, I thought my word would be resilience, because isn't that what we all need most right now? But these last few weeks, as I have felt my own judgment of others, I have come to realize the thing we need to get through this with our mental health and our moral commitments intact is grace. Grace. Grace, and maybe a little humor for yourself when you get it wrong. Grace, and maybe a little curiosity about how others are doing their pandemic. When Unitarian Universalists say we honor the worth and dignity of every person, we cannot do this from a higher ground, only from equal footing. Especially when the stakes are so high and we need everyone to act as though their lives depend on each other, because they do. My tightly held judgment of others is something I have truly cultivated for so many years, I don't know how to release it easily. This is where ritual comes in. People have washed their souls clean in ancient, dusky rivers. To seek a soul that has grown deep, like the rivers, is to return to the water's edge and let that water purify your spirit, so you might rise to meet another day, another season, refreshed and renewed. I have heard from many of you just this week that your mental endurance for this ongoing crisis is being tested anew. This week I heard so many of you say, I just don't know how I can keep going on. Whether it's monotony and loneliness, whether it's trauma and grief, whether it's anxiety and exhaustion, we long for a renewal of energy, of hope, and of grace. Grace. We have been told in this pandemic to wash our hands. What if every hand washing cleansed not only your skin but also your spirit, offering you another chance at grace? Just this week I have begun to pray as I wash my hands. Just a prayer for grace, a prayer to release judgment, a prayer to love more, love better. What if hand washing became a practice of not only cleansing our skin, but also reclaiming inner grace? In a typical year, our water communion service and our ingathering signals a return to one another and to our spiritual community. What if this year the water returns us to a renewal of our deepest soul promise, a renewal of our Unitarian Universalist faith, our promise to have grace for ourselves and each other, our promise to treat others with dignity in a time of confusion and indignity everywhere, our promise to follow health guidelines, yes, and reduce risk for ourselves and others, our promise to stay curious rather than judgmental. This is where our spirit leads us, back to each other, with grace unfurling for one another, loosening our judgment, relaxing our anger, and making a way for loving gratitude once again. This is how we create change in our world, one drop at a time.